Welcome to the Touch MBA Admissions Podcast. Do you need help figuring out which schools to apply to or how to get into the world's top MBA programs? Hey, you're not alone. Join thousands of others on this podcast and on our site, touchmba.com, as they seek the admissions edge. And now, here's your host, Darren Joe.
What's up, guys? It's Darren. Welcome to the Touch MBA podcast. This week, I brought on Jesse Miller, who is an American who decided to study in China at CEIBS, which is mainland China's top-ranked MBA program. And this conversation was just really close to my heart because my career has followed a similar path. After going to university in the US, I decided to come out to Asia to work and have spent the majority of my career, working outside my home country. Although people like Jesse and I are in the minority, Americans who are working or studying abroad, I also think it's just an interesting conversation to learn more about what's required for someone who wants to pursue their MBA in a fast-growing country. China, by most accounts, is expected to outgrow and overtake the US as the number one economy in the world. And so I think what you'll get from this conversation is really an understanding of what it takes to succeed in such a program, what type of applicant would these programs be best suited for. And something Jesse said at the end of the show that really resonated with me was that a program like CEIBS is best for MBA applicants who are willing to chart their own path. There's lots of opportunities in countries like China and India, but the MBA degree is, at least right now, less well known in these parts. And you have to be willing to be more entrepreneurial in terms of how you find opportunities and how you go after them. If you do, you can find some really interesting roles like Jesse has done. He's working for one of the largest media conglomerates now in Shanghai after graduating from CEIBS. I think most applicants are looking at top MBA programs in the US, and for good reason. They're really strong. But I wanted to provide another perspective here and maybe encourage some of you to think about making a bet on countries and programs that aren't as quite well known, but may be in the future. Also, just a reminder that we offer free school selection help at touchmba.com. You can also find a lot of other free resources there, over 100 podcasts. You can sign up to be on our mailing list for your city so that if there are top 50 programs recruiting in your city, you'll get free email event alerts for those. And you can also check out our Ambassadors Forum, where we have students from the top 30 programs there to answer your questions about what their schools are really like. So go check all of that out at touchmba.com. And I also want to thank our sponsor. Save up to $13,000 with a low-interest MBA loan from Common Bond. Common Bond has funded over $1 billion in student loans, and their easy online application only takes minutes. To learn more, visit commonbond.co/touchmba. Common Bond Lending, LLC, NMLS number 1175900. All right, let's get straight to my chat with Jesse. Jesse, welcome to the show.
Great to be here.
Would you mind giving our listeners just a short intro, what you were doing before business school, why you decided to attend CEIBS, and what you're doing now?
Okay, no problem. So my name is Jesse Miller, CEIBS MBA class of 2017. So I just graduated back in April. And before my MBA, I was working for my family's business, actually, but in China. So I helped them to set up a subsidiary office in China, and that began in 2012. And I was there working for 3 years. The business was involving fashion products, and we set up a logistics center in the north of China in a province called Shandong. And so I was in charge of helping to set up that project. And so after spending 3 years in China, the project had gotten to a place where it was fairly stable and steady and operating smoothly. And I was interested. I'd always been interested in pursuing further education. I began looking at business schools, and one of my friends, somebody I knew here in China, who was a Chinese person who had gone to business school in the U.S., suggested that I look at doing the opposite, actually, that because he had had a great experience studying in a foreign country, he thought it would be interesting for me to look at the business schools in China. And so that's how I started looking around at schools in China. And after I learned more about it, I decided to join CEIBS. Oh, and then I should continue on to what happened after.
Yeah, sure. Yes, please.
Okay. And so after, I recently graduated, and I'm now working for Shanghai Media Group, which is a large media conglomerate in China. I specifically work for Dragon Entertainment, which is one of the groups under this large conglomerate. We operate one of China's largest television stations and also do substantial production of television programs. And now we're also expanding in the next 3 years into various other areas of media. So it's a very exciting time to be with this fast-growing company.
Let's rewind and go back to when you said your friend was telling you, well, maybe you should look at business schools in China, and you came across CEIBS because, I did a little research on your background. We actually met like a little over a year ago when you gave us a talk at CEIBS, but you went to Brown University, a very prestigious, highly ranked school in the US. And then you decided to come out to China. And then I'm sure, like many Americans who, went, or non-Americans who went to an Ivy League school, I'm sure, did you ever think, well, maybe I have to go to a top 5, top 10 ranked MBA program, back in the US? I mean, CEIBS is a very highly ranked program, the top ranked program in mainland China, but it doesn't have the same cachet, right? As at least not yet as those top schools in the US. So I'd love to hear your thought process before you made the investment at CEIBS.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that. I had, I was also thinking at the time about looking at law schools too.
Yep.
And with law schools, I do think that the rank was probably more important. I felt that was definitely a very important aspect of it. And one of the reasons I think that I chose business school actually is because I felt like there's just a lot greater depth of opportunity, a lot of greater breadth of opportunity coming out of business school. So I felt like the career possibilities coming out of business school, were going to be more reliant on what I did, the connections I made, that I would really be driving the direction. That the possibilities were extremely broad in terms of, how I could potentially change my career if I focused it in a different direction and, set a new path. So I felt like when selecting business school, that I wasn't going to really ride on the school's reputation, to apply for sort of a standard, I guess, job sort of placement where they're sifting through, resumes from hundreds of MBAs and, have a very specific criteria in terms of, hiring MBAs for these sort of career path roles. I was really thinking more that I was going to leverage a platform to sort of chart my own path.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, I wasn't as concerned with the rankings. In that case, I was really thinking, where am I going to have sort of the greatest opportunities and resources?
And clearly you felt that was in China. I mean, if you look at CEIBS career placement reports, the vast majority of graduates stay in China and most stay in Shanghai.
Sure.
So what's the case for our listeners? What would be the case for getting an MBA in China and pursuing your own path? And what would be the case against it, right? Because I think the MBA might be less well established in the country.
That's right. So I guess, maybe I'll start with trying to do the case against it. I think that's an interesting way to go. So yes, I think as you mentioned, there's, a little, especially for non-Chinese individuals doing an MBA in China.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there are less career path type roles where they've where they really, are hiring MBAs every year, moving them into, a very structured position that they, have well developed. I think for international students, those are more difficult, but there are some now. And in fact, we had 2 international students that joined Alibaba's leadership program this year. And so Alibaba has developed a program that is aimed at, foreigners. And so we were quite successful. CEIBS was quite successful in placing students into that leadership development program this past year. But there, there's less. And so I think that most of the international students at CEIBS, you have to be a little bit more, I don't know if I'd say, creative, but, a little bit more flexible in terms of sort of charting your own path. There are going to be less well-developed paths to move into.
And by well-developed paths, you mean opportunities like, say, with consulting companies or leadership, general management training programs at companies, finance roles? Because that's probably what most people think of when they think of well-trodden paths.
So I'm not, I didn't get too deep into, for example, the consulting world.
Yep.
My understanding was that it's somewhat more difficult, for a international student who does not have an extremely, extremely strong grasp of Chinese to be placed at one of the top consulting firms in China.
Yes.
And, I'd say probably the same goes for finance roles, if it's... But again, that wasn't also an area I was in too deeply.
Yeah.
There's a tremendous amount of finance roles open in Shanghai, and a lot of them I see are for local Chinese companies. And the the job openings are posted in Chinese. I'll say that much. So if you're an international student, a lot of those probably aren't right for you.
Even if your Chinese is fluent, like I know your Chinese is very good.
Yeah. If your Chinese is very good, then they are. And I do know a couple of international students who have gotten roles in finance in China.
Yeah.
So.
Got it. Okay. And then the opposite side, the case for getting an MBA in China, especially if you're an international student.
The positives of studying an MBA in China. First and foremost, I got to talk about, the economic growth rate in China, which continues to be very strong. And I personally, here I see lots of opportunities. That was one of the main things that, attracted me to stay in China in the first place, because I was here doing business and felt like there were a lot of business opportunities here. And so, that's definitely a really key draw. And then the other thing is that depending, you also are bringing your unique experience that you have having grown up in a different place as an international student. So you can help to leverage that. And, you are a unique student in the student body, because about 60% of the student body at CEIBS is from China. And then the great thing about that is that it makes for a really unique experience, because you are, as an international student, you are one of a few people from your country, depending on which country you're from. And so, you're working with a very diverse and international group of fellow students, which I think is a fantastic experience. And, particularly if you're interested in China, which I think that, people studying business, almost anybody who's studying business is going to have some interest, considering the economic miracle that's happened in China over the past 30 years, and the business stories that have happened here and continue to happen here. Basically, the students at CEIBS come from every sector of the Chinese economy, and they have really extensive experience doing business in China. So it's an amazing opportunity to learn from them. You get a really in-depth understanding of what the business environment is like in China.
And when you say that there's lots of growth and business opportunities in China, do you think that applicants need to be looking more on the entrepreneurial side for those opportunities if, say, local and Western companies don't have as many, say, tried and true sort of recruiting, right, that you mentioned earlier in the show?
Yeah.
Because that's kind of an interesting paradox, right? Well, there's all this opportunity, but also the MBA is less well developed.
Yeah. And at the pace that things go here, the speed of change. So I think, everybody has to have an entrepreneurial mindset. So whether it's actually starting your own business or you're trying to, or you're landing a role with another company, you do need to have an entrepreneurial mindset and really be thinking in that way. So yeah, I do think that you have to be entrepreneurial, but not necessarily, starting your own business. But you're going to have to, you probably will have to pitch things. So yeah, maybe the path is less well charted. So when you speak to a company, you actually have to sort of, present the vision yourself for what you can do for the company. Yeah.
And so did you do any sort of internship during your time at CEIBS?
I did. During the summer, I worked for a company that does consulting about renewable energy. And it's a small company that was established by an American guy. And he had been working in China for one of the really large solar companies, Trina Solar, for many years, and then established his own consulting company.
Yeah, very cool.
So that was an interesting experience. It's a very small company, yeah. Which, again, I really enjoyed because it was a very entrepreneurial sort of environment.
So finding that internship and connecting with him, as well as landing your job at Shanghai Media Group where you're working now, how were you able to find those opportunities? Was it through like the CEIBS career services, or did you have to reach out to alumni, or what did you do?
Yeah. The first one, the internship, was purely through my own personal network. And I was the head of the CEIBS Energy and Environment Club. Yeah. Well, during my time there. So, just sort of an area that I was personally, very interested in and passionate about, renewable energy and the environment. And so, because of that, I was networking with a lot of people in that area. And that's how I found the internship.
Got it.
And then for the job, though, that I actually ended up taking, that originally came through the CEIBS alumni network. So in one of the CEIBS WeChat groups, actually, somebody posted that they were interested in hiring, and they were specifically looking at international students for the role.
Got it. Because one thing that fascinated me when I went to the CEIBS bootcamp was I learned that CEIBS graduates something like 600 EMBAs a year, which is a huge number of EMBAs, and that much of the value of that CEIBS network is the senior directors or presidents, working throughout China. Yeah. And I'm wondering, like, how much interaction the MBAs and international MBAs had with that group of CEIBS alumni.
There's quite a bit. So they have a well-developed mentorship program. Then, there's a lot of events that are happening on campus where EMBAs are just coming and attending. There's clubs that have been organized by EMBAs. And so actually, quite a few of the people in SMG are CEIBS MBAs. So during my interview, actually, one of the people on the interview panel had done an EMBA at CEIBS, so they were quite familiar with the program. We had actually had one of the same professors, which is one of China's very esteemed economists, Wu Jinglian. And so we were able to chat about that. I had helped our economics department to translate one of the articles he wrote. So we had a nice chat about that. And then I've continued to take part in the CEIBS EMBA or a CEIBS club, welcome to all alumni, MBA, EMBA. That revolves around the media, culture, and entertainment space here in China. So I've been involved in that club now, even after I've graduated.
And do those CEIBS industry clubs play a big role in terms of who you meet? And like in your situation, you were president of the Energy and Environment Club. I know at U.S. programs, those extracurriculars, those clubs are really important. Would you say that's similar at CEIBS?
Definitely. I was involved in that, and I was involved in the eLab. And I'd say that a lot of the alumni that I interacted with were through those two things. And, particularly the Energy and Environment Club, CEIBS provided a budget and helped to organize basically a large panel conference that we had, the renewable energy industry in China. And so through that, I invited, several, very, very high level representatives from the industry. And, that was an amazing opportunity. And CEIBS provided the budget for that and the space and helped to organize everything. So, having the opportunity to hold events like that, where you're doing things, that are really bringing together people from the industry, and are serving, actually as a place, as a way for the industry, for people to meet and to discuss new ideas and to further develop the industry.
Yeah.
And you're the person behind it and organizing and pulling the strings. It's an incredible opportunity. And if you do it successfully, a really great way to open doors.
Yeah. I mean, and I think that's a great tip to our applicant listeners as well, to figure out like what sort of leadership opportunities there are at your target schools, whether it's CEIBS or another school, right? I mean, that's maybe something you can write in your application. I also wanted to ask you about kind of what you've seen on the ground in terms of CEIBS's reputation within China and outside of China, of course, because as we know, like your relationship with your MBA, that lasts a lifetime, right? Once you have that degree.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, like, to hear your experiences, or maybe even your classmates' experiences, those who are looking for jobs, outside of China, like how the school brand has helped them or what could be improved.
Sure. So my experience, I mean, it's hard for me to say so much outside of China, because I spent a lot of my time in China. And I did my exchange in India. And when I was in India, they knew CEIBS quite well, actually. So what I found is that in India, most of the students at business school have done quite extensive preparation looking at all the different schools. CEIBS is, consistently in the top rankings for Financial Times and other publications. So they were all very familiar with it. I'm not sure if you'd find the same thing at a US MBA school, because I personally haven't, really been to a US MBA school.
Yeah.
But I would say within China, so, because, the MBA itself as a degree, I would say is less developed here. Among people that aren't in business circles, probably a little bit less recognition, but amongst people that within business circles, and like I said, I mean, even on the panel of people interviewing me, and a lot of people within SMG, there's definitely a strong recognition. In fact, I forgot to mention that just recently, our company's strategic investments department hired a guy who was CEIBS MBA 2014. So I've been hanging out with him too. And, the alumni network is strong.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. I mean, I'd love to hear a little bit about your experience at the Indian School of Business as well. Because I don't know many people, even though it's such a reputable school within India, I don't know many foreigners who have actually studied there. Like, how was your experience there? What did you think of it?
I highly recommend it.
Yep.
Yeah, I would absolutely say. So, I think that, and, even when I was there, I think I participated with their marketing department on some stuff. And I don't feel there's a conflict of interest, because I do think that, for any students, if you're considering CEIBS, it's definitely a decision because of China in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And I would say if you're considering ISB, it's a decision because of India in a lot of ways. And I think that those are generally different candidates who have, different background and experiences. Certain industries are probably stronger for one country than another. And then especially, if you have, language proficiency or work experience in either place, then I think that's really, for me, as much as I love Indian School of Business, it just wouldn't make sense, for me to have done the program there because of my work experience in China and language proficiency.
Yeah.
And that was what I found, when I was at Indian School of Business. It was my last semester there. It was my last semester of business school. And I had even been interested, in possibly exploring job opportunities in India and other countries. But, I was just finding a lot of opportunities in China. So I pretty quickly got pulled back. Yeah.
Yeah. How long were you there for at ISB?
3 months.
3 months.
Yeah. So it's a really great program. I would say they're bringing in really strong professors from all around the world. The students are, really top level. They've got great campus and facilities. And then, of course, the Indian economy is also booming right now.
Yeah.
And, I could see it, in the cities that ISB is located, like Hyderabad. I mean, just construction everywhere. It's like building at rapid pace.
And you were one of were there also a lot of exchange students there with you, or were you one of the few kind of? Yeah.
Yeah. And so, I thought that was another, great reason that I would, I think people should consider in School of Business. Yeah. Because they're interested in attracting more foreign students. And, I think that, for the same reasons that, like it's a good experience at CEIBS, I think it's equal, in a lot of ways for ISB, for foreign students, because you are, with a really diverse group, and, you get to leverage a lot of the unique, strengths that you have coming from a different background.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I was saying that, I could really relate to your experience being, one of the few Americans at CEIBS and one of the few foreigners at ISB. But I think, a lot of applicants might not be as comfortable because you really have to push your comfort zone, right? To be the true minority at these schools. But, I feel I've grown through that, and I'm sure you feel the same way. Ever wish there was an easier, more affordable way to get your MBA loans? Well, now there is. Common Bond is a leading student lender, saving members up to $13,000 on MBA loans. Learn more at commonbond.co/touchmba. Common Bond Lending, LLC, NMLS number 1175900. I wanted to ask you about your career switch, right? Because you went from working for your family business, and it sounds like you were doing more operations and logistics type work, and now you're working for a media company. Did you know this going into when you applied for B school that you wanted to jump into entertainment and media, or was this something that developed during your time at CEIBS?
Yeah, it developed as a product of the situation. And my role at the company, I'm in charge of international partnerships. So in terms of the function, it's very similar to what I was doing before. So previously in that role, I was basically helping to set up an office there in China. And I was, the role of the office was to coordinate with all of our partners in China. So, it was, very much focused on just building partnerships between China and the US. And so, in that sense, so I didn't change functions. Yeah, I changed industries, which, I think it definitely happens to a number of MBA students. And, this opportunity came along. The description of the functions, again, that they were looking for really were a match for me. And the entertainment industry is definitely an exciting one in China right now. It's been growing really tremendously.
Yeah. I mean, I would actually love to get your thoughts on both like the startup and entertainment environment in China, specifically maybe talking to applicants who may be considering going to business school in the East or in China. Like, what's going on? What do you see as the big opportunities there?
Yeah. So I would say that absolutely the entertainment industry is definitely one that's growing really strongly right now in China. One interesting thing I could share that I think, people interested in business and economics and this sort of thing might be interested. In China, there's actually, interesting enough, there's a shortage of scriptwriters, is one example. So, to anybody who's an MBA that has had experience, actually writing or producing television shows, the industry here is in big need of that. And so, you'll find, it's an industry that's growing very fast in China. So you're going to find shortages of basically certain skilled individuals. The entertainment industry is an industry that relies on people that have developed very unique skill sets. So if you happen to have any sort of experience in those sort of things, and you're considering doing an MBA, then I would say there's definitely opportunity in China, because they're absolutely hiring, and it's a growing industry. And yeah, and then for the entrepreneurial side,
Yes.
I've been very positive about the entrepreneurial environment in China for some time now. So the Chinese economy right now, I would say it's quite unique. And it's been a while since I was in my economics classes. And I can say, for the past few months, I've been focusing a lot on the entertainment industry. But just personally, my experience here on the ground, feeling the economy personally, doing business here, it's got great opportunity. I mean, I feel like the ability to raise funds is very strong.
Okay.
I feel like there's absolutely great opportunities to raise funds for ventures here. The procuring materials, I don't think there's any place in the world. I mean, obviously, depending on what your business is doing, but I mean, just the ability to source and procure materials in China is unbelievable. I mean, you can go on Taobao and Alibaba, and there's just suppliers of everything you can imagine, goods and services. And the prices are unbeatable. And and then the labor market, there's a great diversity in the labor market. I mean, you can find really skilled computer programmers at the same time as you can find people that are working in like wage labor roles, and the wages, while more expensive perhaps than some developing countries at this point, are still, very reasonable.
Yeah. And would you say, in terms of raising that money, that you said it's a good environment, at least right now, to raise money, would that also apply to foreigners in China?
If you've got a great business idea, totally.
Yeah.
Totally. No.
And I mean, did you see any differences on the ground between what's going on in terms of startups and entertainment in Shanghai versus Beijing versus maybe another city I'm not even thinking about? That
personally, in entertainment, I haven't. I've seen young companies in Shanghai, and I know that there also are in Beijing. So I think both, for entertainment, I think both are fairly strong. Like I said, one thing that I noticed that was sort of very apparent is the finance opportunities in Shanghai.
Mm-hmm.
And perhaps it's similar in Beijing. Perhaps it's just the state of the economy now here. But I mean, a lot of my fellow students were looking at VC and PE type roles, and there were a lot of companies hiring in that space.
No, absolutely. Well, this has been a great chat, Jesse. I have one last question for you. Just reflecting back upon your journey and your experience at CEIBS, who do you think this particular MBA experience would be best suited for? What type of applicant? What type of MBA applicant? Yeah.
So if you have work experience in China and have some language proficiency, then to me it's absolutely a no-brainer. I think that it's the clear choice. If you don't, and you're have experience in certain industries that are particularly doing well in China right now, it's also definitely very worth considering. And then, of course, as I mentioned before, say for international applicants, and I frame this all under the perspective of I'm talking for international students, which is what I understand best. Yeah, definitely. You want to for somebody who's more entrepreneurial, I would say, and is really looking to chart their own path.
Great.
I think that's the ideal.
Yep. No, that's let's end it there. Thank you so much, Jesse, for coming on the show, and appreciate your insights and sharing your experience.
Yes. Thank you for having me. It was great talking to you.
Thanks for listening to the Touch MBA podcast. Don't be shy. We have a mailing list. Go to touchmba.com and get yourself signed up. And we'll keep you posted with the best tips and insider interviews on how to get into your number one school. You can also find us on Twitter and Facebook at Touch MBA. See you soon.